Hey free to play gang, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to take a look at the epic tier list. So I finally have all my thoughts put into place and I think I'm ready to provide what is probably the most exciting tier list for all of you guys, because most of you guys are going to have like most of these epic espers, right, for example. So this is definitely going to be very relevant to all of you guys. Okay, so first on the list we have Alexa. So I'm finding it very difficult to pick content for her to excel in, aside from, you know, scaring away point 1 attackers who plan to auto attack my team. So apart from that, I don't feel like she has a tremendous amount of use right now. Now next one we have Anesidora. So she is very useful with her speed buff and AoE huge 50% HP nuke plus a stun to all enemies in a single kit. So she also gives herself another turn when she uses her third skill as well, which sets her up to be one of the most ideal espers to run with Ocean Waves, which is also my own personal favorite relic set. So she's very strong for Temporal Tower and Cube Miracle as long as you're able to defeat or control their cleansers. So because of that, she's gonna go to A tier. Next one we have everyone's favorite Arcana. So unless they fix his second skill and make it a little bit more impactful for the entire team, it will forever live under the shadows of both Chloe and Tia and be the worst versions of both of them. I think for him, I will put him at D tier. I don't think that, you know, there's a lot of reason for you to use him right now. You may try to come up with some interesting strategy, but chances are he is easily outshined by even some of the rare espers as well. Now next we have Asenath. So she's a pretty alright PvE support that excels the most in PvP content as a weaker counterpart to Clara or Unas as an AP pusher. So that's the unfortunate truth. So what you might be interested to know is that there is actually a 0.055% chance of obtaining Clara, but there is a 0.079% chance of obtaining Asenath. So it's not that far apart. So she's almost as rare as a legendary esper. Now next we have Bonnie. Okay, she is a very powerful esper for PvP, right? But I'm gonna have to chuck her at B tier, and this is why. Okay, so she might be decent for the Temporal Tower and Cube Miracle for her cooldown increasing ability, but she is after all just a very weak controller. Okay, she has a stun on her second skill and a little bit of AP control on her first skill, but that is not enough to make her a little bit more comprehensive and useful in PvE content. So I feel like she's only stuck at PvP where she truly excels in, so that's where she belongs. Now this one is going to be Catherine. This is a major dip from where I previously put her. So previously I put her up at like S tier, right? But right now I'm not going to do that anymore. I feel like she is really good for Fafnir and probably some PvP tanky comps. But to be honest, she is not used as much because her team standoff buff rarely synergizes with a tanky setup, because you're usually not going to need the standoff immediately at the start, alright? So because of that, unfortunately, I'm going to put her at B tier. Next, we have Celine. So she has a very good defense and speed buff and a cleanse on her second skill as well, but carries the weakest control in the game. So she's generally just a very poor AP controller, and she uses sleep, which is not very good. So C tier for her. Now the next two espers are going to be super easy. First we have Chloe. She's an easy S tier. She's a great DPS for all content in the game. And as for Dhalia, she's also probably the best support in a lot of the different content in the game as well. Okay, she carries a lot. She carries a crit rate and attack buff along with an AP push as well. And aside from that, she also has controls on her first and second skill, which makes her pretty relevant in Temporal Tower as well. Now next we have Djoser. So he might be decent for solo farming a pet, but is otherwise not useful in pretty much all other content. So because of that, I'm gonna have to chuck him at C tier. Now next we have Eira, who is a very good AP controller with a very nice second skill for specific scenarios where you need an esper to take their turn immediately or rather quickly, right? So this is a great setup for Nama in PvP nuking, but of course she has a lot of use elsewhere as well, like for example in Chronos or for example in Temporal Tower. Now Fabrice is a very reliable choice for manual content because of his second skill and is really good in duplicating the damage output of your main DPS esper. So for example, way back when I used Fabrice along with like one main DPS, I used Lintel at that point of time to duplicate her damage output because his second skill actually gives her another turn. But Fabrice also comes with a very handy third skill that synergizes with some of the really strong DPS espers as well, like Charmers, Stewart, and Taylor. So because of that, I think he deserves an A tier. Now next we have Falken. He's undergoing a lot of changes, but honestly right now he has no real use and is too easy to disrupt. D tier. Now moving on to Heng Yue, she is probably a personal favorite of mine for being a very uncommon flow type tanky healer. So she is a great choice for soaking height attacks and very useful in all content. So because of that, I think she really deserves an S tier. Now next one is a little bit contentious. So we are talking about Jacob, and the problem with Jacob is he is not that useful in a lot of content. In fact, I'll only say that he's really good in a pep, otherwise you're probably not going to use him ever, right? But because of how useful and how breaking he can be for a pep, I think he really deserves an A tier solely because of the sheer necessity of a pep farming and how he can single-handedly definitely make your team so much faster and so much safer as well. Next one, we have my most recent favorite, Jiang Man. So she is a very strong and very easy to build farmer for Purgatory 12 and basically every single practice stage in the game wherever you are stuck at, right? And she also excels really well in Cube Miracle with the Poison Rune. Next we have Kara. Okay, so pure poison types are generally very inconsistent due to the high resistance of enemies in like the harder content of the game. And for most of the hard content in the game, they also come with cleansers and immunity buffers, so she has very little use. So I think in most cases, a straight DPS is going to perform much better, so D tier. Now moving on, we have Kaylee. So she has a solid crowd control kit, but has wasted stats when built with crit rate because most controllers will need accuracy in this game, and at the same time they also need to have a lot of HP in order to sustain through like some of the longer matches. But for Kaylee's case, she's gonna be rather weak, so because of that, I'm gonna have to drop her at C tier. Now next we have Laura. So Laura is a very easy to build, super extremely easy to build as well. You just need to run her with HP. Her main set doesn't really matter all that much, and she offers incredible benefit, allowing you to run 4 DPS YOLO teams in Ritual Miracles without worrying about taking any damage at all. And it is very easy to raise her to 60,000 HP, which allows your allies to have like upwards of 5k HP shields whenever they take their turn. And because of that, she's really strong in protecting our allies just by letting them move. So she has great use for all content in the game, therefore I'm gonna give her S tier. Now next we have Lin Xiao. This is extremely easy. I'm definitely gonna put her S tier. So she's an overpowered Esper that brings way too much to the table. Okay, so she has probably one of the biggest DPS in the game and the most obnoxious AoE defense break and slow debuff on one single third skill, and is also extremely easy to build because of the buff that she gains on her third skill itself. Now next we have Longmian. So this one can be a little bit surprising to some of you guys. I'm gonna put him at S tier. So he's an actual monster for most content, and when built with Ocean Waves, he's able to throw all of his controlling skills so regularly, so quickly, making all of your runs so much safer. So because of that, and you know, in addition to his leader buff, I think he deserves the S tier. Now next we have Louis. So he is very powerful when used right. A lot of players tend to use him wrongly, and that's the reason why you don't see him that useful, right? So he shines the most for fast clearing Ritual Miracles and obliterating the Holo Battle. So because of that, I'm gonna have to put him at A tier. I would highly recommend some of you guys who have not actually built him yet to probably give him a second look, and you'll quickly realize that he has a lot of potential. Next we have Luo Yan. So he has a very useful kit to subdue heights, specifically heights, right? And other very tanky HP based espers in like, let's say, the Temporal Tower or the Cube Miracle, or even in PvP. However, his extreme niche lands him in the B category. Now next one we have Lin. I would either consider between C and D, but I think I will chuck her at the D tier for one simple reason, okay? So she is very powerful for Fafnir, and that's generally where she's really good at. However, if you're talking about Fafnir, it is arguably not a very viable relic farming location for many reasons, right? So number one, it takes way too long to farm it once, and secondly, it's also very irregular due to, you know, how often the boss can, you know, randomly land stuns and slow debuff on your team that can completely wipe you. And also the relics that Fafnir drops tend to not be like that game breaking in my opinion, except for maybe the Zeus relic set and maybe the Hammer of Thor. So because of how not important Fafnir can be, I feel like she is very irrelevant. Now next we have Meredith. So her third skill is definitely broken right now. I've tested her quite a few times, and she does not reduce the HP cap from any of my tests. With that said, she is still a decent healer and speed buffer with the ability to deal a little bit of damage to the enemy, and it also helps that she is more effective on enemies with a lot more HP, so she's more relevant in like, let's say, the Temporal Tower and all that, right? But because of, you know, just the general use of her kit, I think I'll drop her at B tier. Now next up we have Mona. So she's arguably only useful in one single place, and that is going to be fodder farming, right? So because of that, I'm going to have to drop her at C tier, but do take note that she is one of the fastest, if not probably the fastest fodder farmer in the game. However, she has a very huge relic dependency, which makes her very difficult to build to secure such consistent and high win rate runs. Next up we have Nicole. Okay, so her ability to protect her allies is second to no one. She has a defense buff, a team invincibility buff, Soul Guardian on her second and third skill, and a Seer debuff on her first skill as well. So she is amazing when used with Nama, and can potentially drop 3 passive procs on Nama via her third skill alone, and is definitely very useful in all content in the game. So because of that, S tier. Now next up we have Pritzker. Okay, so he is undeniably the strongest crowd controller in the game, even surpassing Longmian. So he can completely nullify enemy teams with one single third skill, and that is so broken, and he also has a very short cooldown of just 3 turns. So he is very terrifying with Ocean Waves, which is what I would highly recommend you to use him with, so definitely S tier. Now next we have Ren Si. He is very powerful but also very endgame in nature. So he shines mostly in solo APEP and in all PvP, So because of that, I had to put him at B tier for now. He's not exactly a must-have for most players. Now you already know where I'm going to place Sander, so I'm going to put him at S tier. He's probably the best single target DPS Esper in this list due to his high turnover rate and his very powerful attacks that scale of speed. So he is definitely a beast for all content. Now next we have Steward. So he's very strong for a lot of content in the game, especially Chronos, Apep, and Holo Battle. And he can also be quite viable for Temporal Tower as well, since he brings a little bit of control in addition to his high damage output. So because of that, I'm thinking between S and A tier, but I think I will put him at the S tier. Now next we have Taylor, who is not talked about a lot. Okay, so he is actually probably the fastest fodder farmer in the game right now. Probably the fastest. As long as he can one-shot the enemies, he's able to blaze through every single wave and clear it really quickly. And with the recent buff, he is now extremely viable for most content as well. So he's also very cheesy for specific, some of those very difficult Temporal Tower floors or Spatial Tower floors where, you have like a Cecilia and all those kind of revivers. That's where his niche becomes a little bit more prominent, right? So because of that, I think I will chuck him at S tier. I think he has a lot to offer right now. Now, finally, we are moving on to the two twins. So I'm just going to have to chuck them at A tier because it's going to be too much of an effort to move them around later. Okay, so the reason why I put them at A tier and not like B tier or S tier is I feel like they are really good, but at the same time, they have their own setbacks as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so the thing is, the twins brings a lot to the table, especially when used with Jiang Man, for example, right? They become crazy. So they cover almost every essential debuff in this game and is useful in almost all content as well. Their only downfall, in my opinion, is the absence or loss of one of the other. So if you have one of them, you're probably not going to use them, right? You're probably going to chuck them into D tier. But if you have both of them, you're going to need to have them both alive at the same time. If anyone dies, you're practically screwed as well. So I guess that's it for the entire list of the epic espers. Oh my gosh, this was a super long video for me. Hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now this has been Daddy Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.